these councils here, where every time a decision is made, they say it has to meet the rationality test. What is your understanding of a rationality test?
When you exercise public power, you must exercise public power in a rational way. In other words, if it's the legislature or the executive or any public official, if they exercise power and make decisions, it must pass the rationality threshold, because all public power is subject to constitutional control. And the rationality threshold is very low to meet. So, for example, say it's socioeconomic rights that's at stake, and a department is being sued for not providing sufficiently enough service. The judiciary cannot interfere with polycentric decisions that's made by the other arms of state. And why I'm saying that is, if the reason for a policy or a decision meets the rationality test, that is sufficient, and the threshold is quite low, because all decisions that are made there must be a rational connection between the decision made and the purpose for which a provision was enacted.
So in exercising public power, where as acting JP, you have the right to appoint or designate. In exercising that power,
that's correct,
you look at the reasons and say it's a friend of so and so. Is that a rationality? Does that reasoning meet the rationality test, which is the lowest? I'm happy that you are saying the rationality test is very low. Low as it is, do you think the reason of in the exercise of public power to choose a designate, you say, no, this one is a friend of so and so, does that meet a rationality test?
Well, the rationality threshold is low. It is so that someone else may feel that my reasoning does not meet the rationality test, but the threshold is low. And someone else may say that I would have exercised my discretion differently. But the fact that someone says, I am inclined not to agree, I would actually have exercised my discretion differently, it's not sufficient reason to say that someone else's reason is totally irrational.
AJP, I'm not asking you about someone's decision. I'm asking you about your decision. Does it meet a rationality test? Because I'm going to argue that your reasoning does not meet a rationality test. And as a judge who's supposed to be objective, you must answer from that platform from an objective point of view and be honest with this panel. After the engagements we have had with you, in all honesty, not whether someone else will say it meets the lowest expectation or not. In all honesty, after the exercise we have gone with you for almost 4 hours now, do you think that decision meets a rationality test, which you must meet when you exercise a public power? The reason why in the exercising of the public power, you have to meet the rationality test is to avoid abuse of that public power. Because what you did is an abuse of that power. Because it doesn't meet the rationality test. But in your own standard, as a leader, as an aspirant judge president, do you think, on a hindsight now, that decision you took, based on friendship of people, does it meet the rationality test?
Commissioner, the issue is not necessarily about the reality, it's also about perception. So it is so that from a certain perspective, one may believe that it does not meet the rationality threshold, because the mere connection to a friend as one of the candidates may be viewed as insufficient reason to designate a different alternative.
AJP, CJ, please, I think we've been long here. All I'm asking is, does her decision, after all of that, meet a rationality test? What she's explaining, she said it before. We've heard that. We just want to know if she says it's yes or no, that's the answer. But I must not go and second guess her in the deliberations.
Commissioner, I'm trying to explain that the fact that someone is closely connected to or a friend of one of the candidates may not meet the rationality threshold in certain quarters. I can understand that. From my perspective, in designating an alternate, I looked at the matter clinically and said, what would be the best option? A designate who has absolutely no ties with any of the candidates, including myself, or someone who is connected to one of the candidates by virtue of friendship. And I then took the decision that it's in the interest of today's proceedings to have someone who is completely disconnected to all the candidates, and that was my motivation. And Commissioner Malema, I hear you that you want a yes or a no answer. I hear you want that, but I need to explain to the Commission that I was sitting with two options, and from where I sit, I made the most rational decision to choose someone who has no connection with all the candidates.
Therefore, it meets a rationality test.
Excuse me?
Therefore, it meets a rationality test because you made a rational decision. That's what you are saying. I'm not a lawyer. You must simplify it for me.
Yes.
Your decision met the rationality test in
your
corner.
Yes. The threshold for the rationality test is very low. Someone else may feel that the person who is connected to one candidate may indeed be suitable. But someone else, someone in my position, felt I would prefer someone who is not connected at all to any of the candidates. And that would, for me, be a more rational decision, simply because a designate who is not connected to anyone will be able to fulfill their function better, because it's not only about reality, it's also about perception.
I give up, CJ.
That is the answer, Commissioner Malema.
That's what I'm saying, I give up.
You will. Very last question, Commissioners.